my name is Leslie Upchurch, and this is the Toy Store activity. So, the first thing was coming up with a plan. So, I picked a toy store. I picked Toys & Co. at Friendly Shopping Center. And then I went in, and personally, I took pictures so that I would have the pictures on my phone to kind of reference to when I was doing my analysis. And the goal of this was to use our sociological lens to analyze the toy store in gendered ways. So I went in and I took the pictures, as I said, and then I went back and I looked over the pictures and thought about what we've talked about not just in class but in previous classes. So in my analysis, first off, the organization of the toy store. So when you walked in, to the right was an array of different things, mostly boy toys, and there was some swimming stuff, like swimming activities you could do, and different toys and like scooters and stuff, but the majority of it was boy stuff. And then to the left was a bunch of stuffed animals, while there was some like snakes and aliens and stuff like that. It was mostly cute animals, like stuffed animals, like puppies and bunnies and all that stuff. There wasn't really any aisles, such as like girl and boy aisles, but there was columns. And these columns were arranged by age. There was a lot of baby toys which were less gendered. It was more of just an array of different colors. And then there was different aisles just full of baby dolls, and then there was columns full of baby dolls, columns full of like different little toy sets that girls could play with, and obviously the majority of the toys for the girls were pink, and for the boys it was mostly blue and red and stuff like that. And there was mostly, as I mentioned, trucks and cars on the boys' side. A lot of the girls' toys definitely showed symbols of nurturing and the gendered norms from our society that are kind of set with women and how they attend to their babies and stuff. And then a lot of the boy toys were of like cars and men going to work, and there was even some that were for older kids that appeared to be like preteen, that was actually like a date scene, which I found very interesting, kind of getting that younger these days. And I did find one toy that was a woman doctor, which I found interesting because the fact that men are mostly seen with careers, whereas women are typically seen as the nurturing, which there was more at-home stuff for the women. Then far as I found one toy interesting. It was a set for boys and a set for girls. The girls it was both royal families and like a castle and stuff like that, and the boys had royal figures on it, and the girl one said dolls, which I found interesting because a lot of younger boys will be like, they're not dolls, they're action figures. So I found that really interesting that it used that kind of wording to really go with the gendered norms. And of course the girl set had family and stuff like that in it, whereas the boy toy had the castle and like guards and stuff like that in it. And then a lot of the dolls for the girls were white. The miniature the miniature people were very skinny and petite, very attractive looking, but I only saw probably like one or two dolls that weren't white. So that's definitely not very progressed in the whole racial aspect. And as far as the miniature children were very handsome and muscular. And there were some toys, such as like bow and arrows and stuff, where they had gender neutral, but it was still, there was a pink one and then there was a camo one. So I thought it was interesting that the toy had like adapted for girls also, but it was still showing that this is the one for girls because it's pink and this is the one for boys because it's camo. Far as the dolls in general, there were no sets where there was black and white dolls together or Asian and white dolls together. And I really didn't even see any other races other than white and African American. And it was interesting because there was one pack of dolls which there was two sets, and they were the exact same dolls, except there was one set that was African American and one set that was white. Whereas they could have put them together, but they just decided to make a whole different set in general. I think that really goes on basically what I saw. At the counter was straight when you walked in, and it was more of like the more older kids' toys, like the marshmallow gun and little charms and stuff for girls. So that was very gendered as it got older, whereas when it was younger, it was still gendered, but it was like boys and girls could do them if they wanted. And then my reaction to all of this is I find it very fascinating that far as the gender neutral toys, it's come somewhat farther along, far as like the bow and arrows and stuff like that. But far as the race, it really hasn't progressed at all. I feel that they could definitely maybe, even slap just one pack of dolls in there where it's, very interracial instead of having like different sets just for that race. But I do think far as the career, it's really adapting to nowadays where women are more into the labor force. Far as the doll that I mentioned that was a doctor, whereas back a generation before us, there probably wasn't any dolls that were women that were like identified as a career, because women were more seen as caregiver and in the home, whereas that's still very prominent now, even in the toy store, where a lot of the dolls showed pictures of the little girl caring for the doll and such. But I also found it interesting that on the side of the boys, where most of the boy toys were, there was puzzles and all kind of brain intriguing games to kind of help with the memory and stuff like that. And I thought that it was interesting that they put this more on the boy side than the girl side, because in my opinion, I kind of took it in an offensive way as they're trying to make the boys more intellectual than the females. So I thought that was one interesting thing. I think in the future, we will see more of a diversity in race, and a little bit more diversity in the whole careers and what it's kind of depicting in that. But I think far as that, it's coming along, and that showed resemblance in the toys I saw. Another thing that I think will maybe adopt in the future is the body image. We spoke in class about how body image is kind of shifting towards different countries, and although we're adapting, or other countries are adopting our ideas of beauty, I think that we might in the future kind of adapt more of other countries' ideas also, because as we mentioned in the reading, beauty is constantly changing. So I think that is one thing maybe we'll be seeing in the miniature people will be different as well. Thank you. Yay!